Elias stepped off the transport ship with steady steps. The landing platform stretched wide under a pale green sky, and alien towers glimmered faintly in the distance. He had seen many planets in his lifetime, but nothing had prepared him for Veralia. It was a world of warriors, a planet where strength and pride shaped every citizen, where humans were rare visitors, and where aliens had no fear of showing their power. For Elias, a human soldier enhanced by advanced technology and years of experience, it was another mission. But he could feel the tension in the air, thick enough to press against his chest. The transport doors hissed as they closed behind him, leaving him alone on the platform for a moment. He took a deep breath, adjusting the straps of his iron-plated armor. It was heavy, yes, but every plate was designed to absorb strikes from beings far stronger than him. That armor had saved his life more than once. And yet, standing here, looking at the immense alien city with spires and arches unlike anything on Earth, he felt a small twinge of unease. Not because he feared these aliens, he had faced countless enemies, but because this world thrived on pride, and pride often led to challenges, and challenges often led to fights. From above, a group of alien warriors descended. Their armor gleamed under the pale sunlight, but not as much as their confidence. Among them, a young female alien stood out. She had long, silvery hair that shimmered like metal under the light, and her eyes were sharp, bright blue, full of mischief and a hint of arrogance. She moved with grace, but there was a dangerous edge to her presence. Elias noticed her immediately. This was Kara, a warrior known across her world for her skill in combat and her pride in never being defeated. She looked at him with curiosity and a smirk. "You must be the human," Kara said, her voice light but carrying a sharp note. "Everyone talks about you. They say humans are fragile, soft, and slow. Let me see for myself." She tilted her head, studying him as if he were an insect crawling on the floor. "I wonder if you can even stand under pressure, or if you'll crumble like all the others." Elias stayed silent. He had learned long ago that arrogance should not be answered with words but with actions. He simply nodded politely. "I'm here for the mission. I don't need to prove anything." His calm tone seemed to irritate her, and her smirk widened. "Ah, so the human thinks he is strong inside and out," Kara said, stepping closer. "We'll see about that." Her tone carried both challenge and amusement, a dangerous combination. Around them, a small crowd of alien spectators began to gather, drawn by the excitement of seeing the human meet their most famous warrior. Rumors spread fast here. Everyone wanted to see if the human was as weak as the legends claimed or if the stories were wrong. Kara circled him, her movements smooth and precise, like a predator examining prey. Elias mirrored her in some way, keeping his posture strong, his eyes calm. The alien crowd murmured with excitement. The air was filled with anticipation. They expected a display of strength, a clash of wills that would end in humiliation for the human, and Kara was determined to be the one to deliver it. "You know," Kara said, her tone teasing, "I could break you in a single strike. Your armor is shiny, but I wonder if it can withstand my strength. Can it? I'm curious." She raised her hand, long fingers curled into a claw, and laughed softly. It wasn't a cruel laugh exactly, it was playful, but beneath it, Elias could feel the tension in the air. This was not a game to her. She enjoyed testing limits. Elias moved slightly, flexing the steel of his armor as if to show that he was ready. "I don't underestimate anyone," he said calmly. "But I also don't need to prove my worth by fighting every challenge thrown at me." Kara's smirk shifted to a frown. It was rare to meet a human who was not trembling or begging for mercy. She had expected fear, but what she saw instead was confidence, a strange, almost alien kind of calm. She crouched slightly, preparing to test him. With a sudden burst of speed, she lunged forward. Her movement was almost a blur to the human eye. She aimed her palm at Elias's chest, intending to push with all her strength. Elias braced himself. His armor absorbed the strike with a loud metallic clang. The sound echoed across the platform, drawing gasps from the audience. Kara stumbled slightly from the force of the armor's resistance. Her eyes widened in surprise. The human. He had not moved, not flinched, not faltered. She expected some give, some wobble, but he stood like a mountain. Her fist had met iron, and it had not broken him. It had barely left a mark. Impossible, Kara whispered under her breath. Her pride flared, but so did her curiosity. She had faced many strong warriors, but none like this human. Elias's body was unlike anything she had encountered. There was strength, yes, but there was also something else, calm, controlled, unshakable. "You are strong," she said aloud, her tone mixed with frustration and admiration, "but we'll see if you can handle more." She circled him again, faster this time. Her strikes were precise, each movement designed to test his limits, to see if the human's strength was as enduring as it appeared. Elias did not move unnecessarily. Each time her hand struck, the armor rang out like a bell, and each time Kara recoiled slightly, frustrated that her strength was not enough to break him. For a moment, she paused, studying him with intense blue eyes. "I do not understand," she said softly. "No one withstands my power." Her voice had lost some of its teasing quality. Now it carried awe. The human was not only resisting her physically, but he also showed no fear, no hesitation, no sign of weakness. Kara had fought many warriors, and she had never seen anyone move with such quiet confidence. Elias watched her carefully, sensing the change. "Strength is not just the force in your hand," he said. "It is also the control, the patience, and the mind behind it. You are strong, but so am I." His words were calm, steady, almost like a lesson. Kara tilted her head, absorbing what he said, but she did not lower her fists. Pride would not allow it. With a sudden motion, Kara charged again, faster than before, striking at Elias with both fists, aiming to push him off balance. But every strike met the same result. Armor unyielding, human steady. The impact of her blows made her hands ache, but she refused to stop. In her mind, she had to test the human fully. To retreat now would be shameful. The alien crowd gasped again and again as they watched her strikes fail to harm him. Murmurs spread like wildfire. The human may actually be stronger than the legends claim. Elias, though unaffected physically, could sense her struggle. He knew that the fight was not just about power, it was about pride. And pride was a dangerous thing. It could push a warrior beyond reason, beyond safety. He stayed calm, moving only slightly to adjust his stance, absorbing each strike with careful balance. There was no anger in him, no desire to dominate. He was simply prepared for what came. Kara's frustration boiled inside her. Her arms ached, her pride stung, yet her determination did not waver. She took a deep breath, preparing for one more strike. This time she would not hold back. She hurled herself forward, fist clenched tightly, her strength focused entirely on breaking the human's armor and proving her superiority once and for all. The moment her fist connected, a loud metallic clang filled the air, louder than before. But something unexpected happened, not to Elias but to Kara. Her hand cracked painfully. She froze for a second, staring at it in shock. She had never hurt herself like this before. Her strength was great, yes, but the human's iron body had resisted every ounce, and the pressure had injured her own hand. Elias, standing tall, barely reacted. He looked at her with calm eyes, not mocking, not proud, just steady. Kara staggered back, clutching her broken hand. The crowd fell silent. Even the queen watching from above seemed shocked. Kara's eyes met Elias's, a mixture of anger, confusion, and awe swirling in their depths. She had mocked him, expecting to see weakness, expecting to triumph easily, but instead, she had broken herself against him. Kara's hand throbbed, with pain. She stared at the shattered fingers, unable to believe what had just happened. Her pride, the very essence of her being as a warrior, felt broken. She had expected Elias to falter, to flinch, to cry out under the power of her strike. But he had not moved. Her hand, her strongest weapon, had broken against his iron body. The realization hit her like a lightning bolt. She had underestimated Him, and now her embarrassment burned hotter than any pain in her flesh. The crowd was silent, still in shock. Aliens whispered to each other, their wide eyes fixed on the human who had defied all expectations. For Kara, this silence felt like a weight pressing against her chest. She had mocked him moments ago, confident in her strength. And now, standing before him with a broken hand, she felt vulnerable in a way she had never felt before. Elias, meanwhile, remained calm. He could see the storm of emotions in her eyes, anger, frustration, disbelief, and something else. A flicker of respect, perhaps. He did not gloat, did not mock her back. He simply stood, letting his presence speak for him. His iron body gleamed, faintly under the alien sun, each plate of armor reflecting the pale green light. He made no move to attack, no attempt to further embarrass her. In his calm, controlled silence, he sent a quiet message. Strength is not about cruelty, and true power is steady, not violent. Kara shook her head, trying to clear the pain and humiliation. She flexed her fingers, testing them carefully. Kara stood with her head slightly lowered, her broken hand still throbbing painfully. The sting of her defeat wasn't just physical, it had dug deep into her pride. She had never felt so humiliated in front of her people. For a moment, she wished she could disappear into the ground. But the human before her, Elias, wasn't looking at her with mockery. He wasn't even looking at her with pity. He was just calm, unbothered, and it irritated her. She clenched her teeth as the pain in her hand flared again. The sharp break in her fingers was a reminder of her failure, but Elias's words echoed in her mind. Strength is not only about hitting hard, it is also about knowing your limits. How could a human, a being so different from her people, understand such a thing? Her people prized power, speed, and overwhelming force. They believed that to be strong meant to dominate, to bend the world to your will. Yet here Elias was, standing in front of her unscathed, teaching her lessons she never expected to learn. Kara looked up, her expression a mixture of confusion and admiration. Elias was still standing in front of her, his body unmoving, his gaze steady. He was waiting for something, waiting for her to do something. And for the first time in her life, Kara felt a strange hesitation. She wasn't sure what to do next. The crowd, which had been silent ever since the incident, began to murmur. The aliens surrounding the arena exchanged glances, unsure of what to make of the scene before them. No one had expected this. They had come to see a powerful alien warrior dominate a fragile human, but instead they had witnessed an unexpected turn of events. Their pride had been shaken, and now they were unsure of what to think. Kara's pride stung again, sharper than before. She needed to regain control. She needed to prove to herself, to the crowd, and most importantly, to Elias that she was still a warrior. She took a deep breath and straightened up. The pain in her hand was still there, but it didn't matter. She would not show weakness. She could not. "I'm not done," Kara said, her voice quieter now, tinged with something that resembled respect. It was hard for her to admit, but the human had taught her something in that moment. He wasn't just strong in body, he was strong in spirit, and if she was to truly face him, she would need to tap into that same kind of strength. It wasn't about breaking him or overpowering him with brute force, it was about something else, something deeper. Elias nodded, a slight smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. He had been waiting for this moment, for Kara to realize that strength wasn't just about the physical. "I know," he said simply. "You've already shown your strength, Kara, but it's not just your body that defines you, it's your mind and your heart." The words hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. She had always been taught that emotions, especially compassion, were weaknesses. But Elias seemed to suggest that it was those very things that made him strong. Was that really true? Could it be that the warriors of her planet had been wrong all this time? Kara lowered her gaze, staring at the broken hand that still throbbed with pain. For a moment, She didn't know whether to feel angry or confused. She had never thought of herself as weak, but now in front of Elias, she wasn't so sure. She had learned something today, not about the limits of her strength, but about the limits of her pride. And that was a lesson that would change her, forever. She glanced up at Elias, her eyes steady but not as hard as before. "You have a strange way of fighting," she said, the words coming out more thoughtfully than she had intended. "I expected you to be like the others, weak, soft. But you—" She paused, her voice faltering for a moment. "You fight with something I've never seen before?" Elias looked at her with a soft expression, his voice calm but sincere. "I don't fight to prove anything. I fight to survive, to protect the ones I care about. That's the difference. It's not about strength. It's about what you're willing to fight for." Kara swallowed hard. She had never truly understood what Elias was saying. To her, fighting was always about honor, about proving herself, about showing the galaxy that she was the best. But Elias made it sound so simple. He fought not for honor, but for the people he loved. The realization struck her hard. She had been fighting for herself, for her own pride, and in doing so she had missed the deeper purpose of combat. The true strength was not in defeating others. It was in standing firm for something bigger than oneself. "I never thought about it like that," Kara admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias smiled again, his tone warm. "Most people don't. But that's what makes it important. You don't have to prove yourself to anyone. You just have to do what's right for you." Kara nodded, her heart heavy with a mixture of admiration and regret. She had spent so long trying to prove herself to others, to her people, to the galaxy, that she had forgotten why she fought in the first place. It wasn't about pride or glory. It was about something more, something deeper. As Kara stood there contemplating Elias's words, the crowd began to shift. The murmurs of confusion were replaced with whispers of curiosity. They were watching, not just a human, but an alien warrior who had been humbled, who had learned something from that human. It was rare to see an alien like Kara, proud, fierce, and strong, become vulnerable in such a way. But it was happening, and it was something the crowd would remember forever. Elias, sensing the change in the atmosphere, took a step back. He didn't need to say anything more. He had said what needed to be said. Kara had learned the lesson in her own time, in her own way. The path forward was hers to choose. He didn't need to push her any further. The silence that followed was not awkward, but thoughtful. It was as though the entire arena had paused, collectively reflecting on the lesson that had just unfolded. Kara looked around at the faces of her people, and for the first time, she didn't feel the weight of their judgment. She wasn't just a warrior anymore. She was something more, someone who had learned, who had grown, and she would carry that lesson with her for the rest of her life. "You've won," Kara said quietly, but her voice was filled with something new. Respect. She wasn't looking at Elias as an enemy anymore. She was looking at him as someone who had shown her a different way, a better way. Elias raised an eyebrow, surprised by her words. "Won?" he asked. "I didn't fight to win. I fought to teach." Kara gave him a small, genuine smile. "Then consider it a victory, Elias. You've taught me something I never knew." The crowd, still silent, began to murmur again, but this time the tone was different. There was respect in their voices. They weren't just talking about a fight, they were talking about something deeper. They were talking about growth. And for the first time, Kara felt proud, not because she had defeated someone, but because she had learned something that would change the way she saw the world forever. Kara stood quietly, her thoughts racing. The lesson Elias had given her was still fresh in her mind. For a moment she had forgotten about the crowd, about the strength she had always prided herself on. Now, as the sounds of whispers began to swell, she realized that everything had changed. The way she saw herself, the way she saw others, and the way she saw strength It was all different. The alien crowd, once full of excitement and anticipation for her victory, now seemed to look at her with a mix of curiosity and respect. It wasn't the usual admiration they gave to someone who defeated an opponent. No, this was something new. She could feel their eyes on her, their judgment replaced with something else, and for the first time she didn't feel the weight of their expectations. She felt free. "Do you feel better now?" Elias asked, his voice calm, almost gentle, as he stood beside her. She hadn't noticed him move, but now his presence beside her felt less like a challenge and more like an ally. A strange, unspoken bond had formed between them during the fight, a bond not built on strength but on understanding. Kara hesitated, glancing at Elias. His armor was still flawless, his posture unwavering. He had stood there taking everything she threw at him, not because he had to, but because he believed in something beyond the fight. She took a deep breath before speaking. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice quieter than usual. "I've always thought of myself as strong, unstoppable even. But today I realized I was wrong." She paused, looking down at her hand, still aching. "It's not just about being strong. It's about what you do with that strength, and what you fight for." Elias gave her a small, approving nod. "You've learned something important, Kara. True strength isn't about defeating others. It's about knowing when to stand firm and when to walk away. It's about using your strength for something bigger than yourself." Kara turned to face him fully, her expression serious but not hostile. "And you think I can do that?" Her voice was soft, unsure. Elias met her gaze, his expression warm but firm. "I know you can." For a moment they stood there in silence, the crowd's murmur growing louder as they exchanged glances, still processing the unexpected turn of events. Kara felt a strange sense of calm washing over her. She had never been one to listen to others, especially not humans. But Elias wasn't like the others. His words had touched something deep inside her, something she had buried for a long time. Finally, Kara broke the silence. "I want to learn more. About you, about your people, about this way of thinking." She was still wary, still unsure, but something in her wanted to understand. Days passed since the fight in the arena, but for Kara, the lessons she learned from Elias had not faded. Every moment since that day had felt like a quiet revelation. The weight of her past, the pride she had once clung to so desperately, began to loosen. She had always seen strength as the ability to conquer, to dominate. Now she was beginning to understand that true strength was not about bending others to your will, but about standing firm in who you were and finding the courage to change. It was early morning when she found herself standing outside the palace gates looking out over the city. The streets below were just beginning to fill with the busy hum of the day. Alien merchants setting up their stalls, soldiers preparing for their duties, children running to their schools. But for Kara, none of it seemed as important as the path she was about to take. She had to make a choice, whether to continue living in the way her people had taught her, or to take the next step forward and embrace the lessons Elias had shown her. The wind ruffled her hair as she took a deep breath, the cool morning air filling her lungs. There was a sense of calm in this moment, but there was also a weight to it. She was about to leave the palace and embark on a journey that would test her in ways she couldn't even predict. It was frightening, yes, but it also felt like the right thing to do. "Kara." Elias's voice came from behind her. He had been following her since early morning, sensing that she needed time to think. "Are you ready?" Kara turned to face him, her eyes meeting his steady gaze. "I think I am," she said softly. There was no hesitation in her voice now. There was only the certainty that she had made up her mind. Elias gave her a small, approving smile. "It won't be easy," he warned, his voice gentle but firm. "There will be times when you'll doubt yourself, when you'll wonder if you're on the right path. But remember, Kara, Change takes time. It's a process. Kara nodded, her mind already racing with the possibilities of what lay ahead. She had a long road to walk, and she knew it wouldn't always be clear. But she also knew that she couldn't continue living in the shadows of her past mistakes. She had to move forward, to become more than just a warrior. "I understand," she said, her voice steady now. "And I'm ready to begin." Together, they walked through the palace gates, and Kara felt a strange sense of freedom as she stepped beyond them. This was no longer about proving herself in the eyes of her people. This was about her, about what she wanted to learn and become. As they walked, Elias spoke of his experiences, of the battles he had fought and the lessons he had learned along the way. Kara listened intently, absorbing every word. He spoke not as a teacher lecturing a student, but as someone who had walked a similar path and understood the struggle. "The hardest part," Elias said as they made their way toward the city's edge, "is not the physical battle, it's the mental one. It's the fight inside yourself to become something better, something stronger than you were yesterday." Kara glanced at him, taking in the meaning behind his words. "And how do you keep fighting that battle?" she asked. Elias smiled, a quiet, knowing smile. "You keep moving forward, even when you feel like giving up. You take it one day at a time, one step at a time." Kara thought about his words, letting them sink in. Moving forward. It seemed so simple, yet it was the hardest thing for her to do. She had always relied on strength, on the power to fight through every challenge. But now the challenges she faced weren't physical. They were mental, emotional. She wasn't just learning to fight better. She was learning to become a better version of herself. As they reached the edge of the city, they paused, looking out at the wide plains that stretched beyond the city walls. The land seemed endless, the horizon a blur of light and shadow. Kara felt a pang of nervousness in her chest. This was the beginning of something new, something uncertain. And that uncertainty felt both exciting and terrifying at the same time. "Where do we go from here?" Kara asked, her voice uncertain. Elias's gaze softened as he looked at her. "We go wherever you need to go," he said simply. "There's no one path to follow. You have to find your own way." Kara nodded, understanding what he meant. She had spent so many years following the path laid out for her by her people, by her warrior training, by their expectations. But now, she was carving her own path. She didn't need to follow anyone else's footsteps. She could make her own decisions, shape her own future. "I think I know where I want to start," Kara said after a pause. "I want to understand what true strength is, not just in battle, but in life. I've spent too long focusing only on fighting and winning. Now I want to learn what it means to protect others, to be strong for the right reasons." Elias's eyes shone with approval. "That's a good place to start." For the next few weeks, Kara and Elias traveled through the vast landscapes of the planet. They visited distant villages and remote outposts, meeting with the people who lived there. Elias showed Kara the many ways that true strength could manifest in everyday life, not just in physical battles, but in acts of kindness, compassion, and leadership. He took her to places where people were fighting not with weapons, but with their hearts. She saw how communities came together to support one another, how leaders used their influence to protect the weak and ensure peace. Kara watched and learned, her perspective shifting with every new experience. Along the way, she met people who, like Elias, had chosen to fight, not for personal glory, but for the well-being of others. She saw the value in kindness, in standing up for what was right, and in showing strength through understanding and compassion. It was a lesson she had never expected to learn, but one that resonated deeply with her. One evening, as they sat by a campfire, Kara spoke to Elias in the quiet of the night. "I didn't think I could change," she admitted, staring into the flames. "I thought I was too set in my ways, but now I feel like there's so much more I could be. I'm not just a warrior anymore. I'm something more." Elias turned to her, his gaze kind but understanding. "That's the first step, Kara. Recognizing that there's more to you than just your strength. That's what makes you truly powerful." Kara smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in years. She had no idea where this journey would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. She was no longer the person she had been before. She had learned that strength wasn't just about defeating enemies. It was about knowing when to fight, when to protect, and when to show kindness. It was about standing firm in who you were and never losing sight of the bigger picture. As the fire crackled between them, Kara felt a deep sense of peace settle within her. She wasn't sure where her path would take her, but for the first time, she was ready to face whatever came next. Kara woke early, the pale light of dawn creeping through the window of the small hut where she had spent the night. The air was fresh, cool, and carried the scent of the earth. It was a quiet morning with no sounds of combat or the clang of metal. This had been a long time coming. The peaceful moments, the calm before a storm of internal change. She had been traveling with Elias for weeks now, learning, reflecting, and growing. The landscapes had changed from one village to another, and with each new place, Kara had found herself gaining new insights into what it truly meant to be strong. Strength, she had come to realize, wasn't just about power or skill in combat. It was about understanding oneself and using what you had for something greater than yourself. Elias had shown her that. As the sun rose higher, Kara stood stretching her arms above her head. It was hard to ignore the stirrings of doubt that sometimes crept in. Was she really changing? Could she ever be more than the warrior she had been? But when she thought of the people she had met along the way, the moments of kindness she had witnessed, the quiet strength they displayed, she knew that this was the right path. It wasn't going to be easy, but she was ready to keep walking it. She stepped outside, the cool morning air brushing against her skin, and saw Elias standing near the edge of the village, looking out at the horizon. His figure was silhouetted against the rising sun, as calm and steady as ever. Kara hesitated for a moment before approaching him, knowing that today would be different. Today she was going to take the next step in her journey. "Good morning," she greeted him, her voice soft but confident. Elias turned, a small smile forming on his face. "Morning, Kara. How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in a long time," she said, walking closer. She stood beside him, looking out at the vast expanse of land that stretched before them. "I've been thinking a lot lately." Elias nodded, as if he had been expecting this. "About?" Kara took a deep breath, gathering her thoughts. "About the warrior I used to be. About the person I'm becoming. I've spent so much of my life thinking that strength was all about fighting, all about winning. But now, I see that it's so much more than that." Elias glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "And what do you see now?" Kara turned to him, her eyes shining with a new understanding. "I see that strength is about balance. It's about knowing when to fight and when to step back. It's about protecting others, not just proving that you're the strongest. I'm still learning, but I think I'm starting to understand what it means to be strong for the right reasons." Elias smiled. "You've come a long way, Kara. You've learned more than most could in a lifetime."